The evening sky was turning dark purple as Dr. Amara Johnson drove through the quiet streets of Riverside Heights. She had just left a charity board meeting at the community center. The meeting had gone well. They had discussed plans for a new youth program. Amara felt good about the work they were doing. Her black Mercedes sedan moved smoothly down the tree-lined street. The houses here were large and beautiful. Neat lawns stretched in front of each home. Street lights were just beginning to flicker on. Amara hummed along to the jazz music playing softly from her car speakers. She was thinking about tomorrow's big presentation at her company. Amara was the CEO of TechBridge Solutions. Her company created software that helped hospitals work better. She had built the business from nothing 12 years ago. Now it was worth over $50 million. She employed 200 people. Her company had won awards. Business magazines wrote articles about her success. But tonight she was just a woman driving home after a long day. She lived only 2 blocks away from where she was now. Soon she would be home with her husband and 2 children. Her daughter had a school play coming up. Her son needed help with his science project. These were the things on her mind as she drove. Behind her, Officer Derek Morrison sat in his patrol car. He had been parked on the side of the road for the past 20 minutes. It was a slow Tuesday evening. Not much was happening in this part of town. He was bored and scrolling through his phone. Then he saw Amara's car drive past. His head lifted, his eyes narrowed. He watched the black Mercedes move down the street. A black woman was driving, in this neighborhood, in that expensive car. Morrison put down his phone. He started his engine. Something did not feel right to him. This neighborhood was mostly white. Very few black families lived here. When he saw black people driving through, his mind always went to the same place. They must be up to something. Maybe the car was stolen. Maybe they were looking for houses to rob. He had been a cop for 15 years. In his mind, he was just being careful. He was protecting the neighborhood. That is what he told himself. But the truth was different. Morrison had pulled over dozens of black drivers over the years. Most of the time, he found nothing wrong, but he always assumed the worst first. He pulled out onto the street and followed Amara's car. She was driving normally. She was not speeding. She used her turn signal. She stayed in her lane. Morrison followed her for 2 blocks. He was looking for any reason to pull her over. Any small mistake. Amara noticed the police car behind her. Her heart sank a little. She had done nothing wrong. She knew that. But she also knew what might happen next. She had been pulled over before for no reason. It had happened 3 times in the past 5 years. Each time the officer had seemed surprised when they learned who she was. She kept driving carefully. She made sure to do everything right. But she also reached over and grabbed her phone. She set it up on the dashboard mount. With one tap, she started recording. The camera pointed out through her windshield. It would capture everything that happened. Morrison turned on his lights. Red and blue flashed in the darkness. His siren gave a short whoop. Amara took a deep breath. She pulled over to the side of the road. She put her car in park. She placed her hands on the steering wheel where they could be seen. Morrison sat in his car for a moment. He was running her license plate through the computer. The car was registered to Amara Johnson. No warrants, no problems. The car was not stolen, but Morrison was not satisfied. He still felt like something was wrong. He could not shake the feeling. He got out of his patrol car and walked toward Amara's vehicle. His right hand rested near his gun. His left hand held a flashlight. His face was hard and cold. He had already decided that this woman was trouble. He did not know why yet. But he would find something. Amara watched him approach in her side mirror. She could see the way he walked. She could see his hand near his weapon. She had seen this before. She knew she had to stay calm. One wrong move, and this could turn bad very fast. Morrison reached her window. He tapped on the glass with his flashlight. Amara pressed the button to lower the window. Cool evening air rushed into the car. "License and registration," Morrison said. His voice was sharp. He did not say hello. He did not explain why he pulled her over. He just made his demand. "Good evening, officer," Amara said. Her voice was calm and polite. "May I ask why you stopped me?" Morrison's jaw tightened. He did not like being questioned. License and registration, now. Amara kept her voice steady. I'm going to reach into my purse now to get my wallet. I'm telling you this so you know what I'm doing. She moved slowly. She picked up her purse from the passenger seat. Morrison's hand moved closer to his gun. Amara opened her purse and pulled out her wallet. She took out her driver's license. Then she opened the glove box and got her registration and insurance papers. She handed everything to Morrison. He took them and shined his flashlight on her license. He looked at her picture, then he looked at her face, then back at the picture. His flashlight moved around the inside of her car. He was looking at everything: the leather seats, the expensive sound system, the designer purse. This your car? He asked. Yes, it is, Amara replied. You sure about that? Amara felt anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. Getting angry would not help. Yes, officer, that's my car. I bought it 2 years ago. The registration is in your hand. It has my name on it. Morrison looked at the registration again. It did have her name, but he was not done. What are you doing in this neighborhood? I live here, Amara said. 2 blocks that way. She pointed down the street. Morrison made a sound in his throat. He did not believe her. Right. And what do you do for work? How do you afford a car like this? Amara stared straight ahead. This question. She hated this question. No white person driving a nice car got asked this question. But she knew better than to say that right now. I work in technology, she said simply. Technology, Morrison repeated. He made it sound like a lie. Uh-huh. Stay here. He walked back to his patrol car with her documents. Amara sat in her car. Her hands were shaking now. Not from fear, from anger, from frustration, from the unfairness of it all. She had worked so hard. She had built a successful company. She paid her taxes. She donated to charity. She volunteered in her community. And still she got treated like this. She looked at her phone. It was still recording. Good. She would need that recording. She always needed proof. Without proof, no one believed these things happened. In his patrol car, Morrison was taking his time. He was running every check he could think of. He was looking for warrants, outstanding tickets, anything. But everything came back clean. Amara Johnson had a perfect record, not even a parking ticket. Morrison sat there frustrated. He had been so sure. She looked suspicious to him. But he could not find anything. Still, he was not ready to let her go. Not yet. There had to be something. He got out of his car and walked back to Amara's window. The way he walked showed his irritation. He was not happy that she was clean. That told Amara everything she needed to know about why she had been stopped. Step out of the vehicle, Morrison said. Amara's stomach dropped. Why? What did I do wrong? Step out of the vehicle, now. His voice was louder now, more aggressive. Officer, I have the right to know why you pulled me over. I was not speeding. I did not run any lights. I did not break any laws. Morrison's face turned red. His hand went to his gun belt. I said step out of the vehicle. Are you refusing to follow my orders? This was the moment Amara had been dreading. She knew what happened to black people who refused orders, even when those orders were not legal. She thought of her children. She thought of her husband. She thought of all the news stories she had seen. But she also knew her rights, and she knew who she was. She was not just any driver. She had power. She had connections. She had resources. And she had the truth on her side. I am not getting out of my car unless you have a legal reason to ask me to do so, Amara said. Her voice was firm, but not loud. I have not committed any crime. You have no probable cause. Morrison's eyes went wide. No one talked to him like this. Especially not in this neighborhood. Especially not someone who looked like her. His pride was hurt. His authority was being challenged, and he did not like it one bit. Morrison stepped back from the car. His face was red with anger. No one challenged him like this. Not in his town. Not on his watch. He reached for the radio on his shoulder. This is Morrison. I need backup at Riverside and Oak Street. I have a hostile suspect refusing to cooperate. Amara closed her eyes for a moment. Backup. This was escalating fast. She kept her hands visible on the steering wheel. She knew that any sudden movement could be seen as threatening. She had to stay calm even though her heart was pounding. I am not being hostile, officer, Amara said clearly. I am simply asking why I was pulled over. That is my legal right. Morrison ignored her. He stood a few feet from her car, hand on his gun. He was waiting for backup. He kept looking at her like she was dangerous, like she might suddenly do something crazy. But Amara just sat there, hands on the wheel, looking straight ahead. Around them, the quiet neighborhood was starting to wake up. Lights were turning on in nearby houses. The flashing police lights had caught people's attention. A few neighbors came out onto their porches. Some stood in their doorways. They wanted to see what was happening. Mrs. Margaret Kim lived in the house closest to where Amara was pulled over. She was a retired teacher, 72 years old. She had lived on this street for 40 years. She opened her front door and walked out onto her porch. She saw the police car. She saw Amara's Mercedes. Then she recognized Amara. Margaret had met Amara at several neighborhood meetings. They had served together on the community center board. Just tonight, they had been at the same meeting. Margaret knew exactly who Amara was, and she could see that something was very wrong. Margaret pulled out her phone. She started recording. If this went bad, there needed to be evidence. She had seen too many news stories. She knew how these things could end. Across the street, a young couple had also come outside. The husband, James Park, was holding his phone up. He was recording too. His wife, Sophie, stood next to him with their baby. They watched with worried faces. Another neighbor, an elderly white man named Mr. Henry Walsh, walked down his driveway. He had lived on this street longer than anyone. He knew every family. He knew Amara too. He had even been to a dinner party at her house last year. Her husband had grilled the best ribs he had ever tasted. What's going on here? Mr. Walsh called out. Morrison turned to look at him. Police business, go back inside. That's Dr. Johnson, Mr. Walsh said, pointing at Amara's car. She lives 2 houses down from me. What's the problem? Sir, I need you to step back, Morrison said. His voice was hard, but Mr. Walsh did not move. I know her. She's not causing any trouble. I've known her for 5 years. She's a good neighbor. Morrison's jaw clenched. This was not going the way he planned. He had expected to handle this quietly. Pull over the suspicious person, search the car, maybe find something, and that would be that. But now he had witnesses. People were recording, and they were saying they knew this woman. Another police car turned onto the street. Its lights were flashing, but the siren was off. It pulled up behind Morrison's car and stopped. A police officer got out. Her name was Sandra Chen. She had been a cop for 8 years. She was known for being fair and careful. Chen walked toward Morrison. She could see the crowd gathering. She could see the phones recording. She could see Amara sitting in her car with her hands on the wheel. Something felt wrong about this whole situation. Morrison, what do we have here? Chen asked quietly. Morrison pointed at Amara's car. Suspicious vehicle. Driver is being uncooperative. She's refusing to follow my orders. Chen looked at the Mercedes. She looked at Amara. Then she looked at the gathered neighbors. What orders? I told her to step out of the vehicle. She refused. Did you tell her why you pulled her over? Chen asked. Morrison hesitated. I don't need to explain myself to suspects. Chen frowned. She had worked with Morrison before. She knew his history. She knew about the complaints. Other officers talked about him. They said he had problems with black drivers. Nothing had ever been proven, but the rumors were there. Derek, you need to have a reason to pull someone over, Chen said quietly. And you need probable cause to order them out of their vehicle. I saw her driving through the neighborhood. It looked suspicious. Driving is not suspicious, Chen said. She was trying to keep her voice calm. She did not want this to blow up, but she also knew that Morrison was wrong. Chen walked over to Amara's window. She kept her hands visible and away from her weapon. She wanted Amara to feel safe. "Good evening, ma'am. I'm Officer Chen. Can you tell me what happened here?" Amara looked at Chen. She saw something different in this officer's eyes. Something that looked like actual concern. "I was driving home from a meeting. Officer Morrison pulled me over. I asked why. He demanded my license and registration without telling me what I did wrong. Then he started asking personal questions about how I could afford my car. Then he demanded I get out of my car. I asked for a legal reason. That's when he called for backup." Chen nodded. She understood exactly what had happened. She had seen Morrison do things like this before. "Do you live in this neighborhood?" "Yes, 2 blocks away. I've lived there for 5 years." "Where were you coming from?" "The community center. I'm on the board. We had a meeting tonight about the youth program." Margaret Kim stepped forward from her porch. "Officer, I can confirm that. I was at the same meeting. Dr. Johnson and I serve on the board together. We left at the same time. I drove home the opposite direction. She drove this way because this is the way to her house." Chen looked at Margaret. Then she looked at the other neighbors. They were all nodding. They all seemed to know who Amara was. "Dr. Johnson?" Chen asked. "Are you a doctor?" "I have a PhD in computer science," Amara said. "But I'm also the CEO of TechBridge Solutions. We're a medical software company based downtown." Chen's eyes widened slightly. She knew that company. Everyone in the city knew that company. They had just been in the news for winning a major contract with the hospital system. And the CEO was this woman sitting in this car. Chen walked back to Morrison. Her face was serious. "Derek, we need to talk, right now." She pulled him away from the cars. They stood near the back of Morrison's patrol car. The neighbors could not hear what they were saying, but they could see Chen talking intensely. They could see Morrison shaking his head. They could see him getting defensive. "Do you know who that is?" Chen asked quietly. "Some woman who thinks she's better than everyone," Morrison said. "That's Dr. Amara Johnson. She's the CEO of TechBridge Solutions. That company is worth millions. She employs hundreds of people, and more importantly, she sits on the Police Oversight Commission." Morrison's face went pale. The Police Oversight Commission. That was the group that reviewed complaints against officers. That was the group that made recommendations about discipline. That was the group that could end careers. "You're lying," Morrison said. "I'm not. And you just racially profiled a member of the Police Oversight Commission. You pulled her over for no reason. You asked her invasive questions. You tried to order her out of her car without cause, and you did it all in front of witnesses who were recording everything." Morrison looked around. He saw all the phones pointed at them. He saw the neighbors watching. He saw Amara still sitting calmly in her car. His stomach dropped. "I was just doing my job," Morrison said, but his voice was weak now. "No, you weren't. You profiled her because she's black and driving a nice car in a white neighborhood. And now it's all on camera." Morrison looked at his own patrol car. His dash cam had been running the whole time. It would show that Amara had not committed any traffic violation. It would show that he had no reason to pull her over. His body cam was also running. It had recorded everything he said. He felt panic rising in his chest, but he could not back down now. Not in front of everyone. He had to find a way to justify this. He had to find something wrong. Anything. "I'm writing her a ticket," Morrison said. "For what?" Chen asked. "She didn't do anything." "Failure to comply with a lawful order. That's not going to stick, and you know it. You had no cause to order her out of the vehicle." But Morrison was already walking back to his patrol car. Pride and fear were making him do stupid things. He could not admit he was wrong. He could not let this woman get away with challenging him. So he was going to double down. Chen shook her head. This was going to end badly. She knew it. Morrison knew it too, but he was too proud to stop. Morrison grabbed his ticket book from his car. He walked back to Amara's window. His hand was shaking slightly as he wrote. The neighbors watched. The cameras recorded. And Morrison wrote a ticket for failure to comply with a lawful order. A ticket that would never hold up in court. a ticket that would probably cost him his job. He ripped the ticket from the book and held it out to Amara. "Sign here." Amara looked at the ticket. Then she looked at Morrison. She saw the fear in his eyes now. He knew he had made a mistake, but he was too proud to fix it. So he was making it worse. She took the ticket and signed it. She did not argue, she did not yell, she just signed it and took her copy. "You'll be hearing from my attorney," Amara said calmly. "And for your information, I serve on the Police Oversight Commission. I'll be filing a formal complaint tomorrow morning." Morrison's face went from red to white. His hands started shaking. He had just realized how badly he had messed up. But it was too late now. The damage was done. "You're free to go," he said quietly. Amara started her car. She pulled away slowly and carefully. She drove the 2 blocks to her house. In her rearview mirror, she could see Morrison still standing in the street. She could see Chen talking to him. She could see the neighbors still watching. When she pulled into her driveway, she finally let herself feel the emotions she had been holding back. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was racing. Tears filled her eyes. But she had done it. She had stayed calm. She had protected herself. And she had made sure everything was recorded. Her husband opened the front door. He had been waiting for her. He saw her face and knew immediately that something was wrong. Marcus Johnson stood in the doorway watching his wife walk up the driveway. He had been married to Amara for 15 years. He knew her face better than anyone. He could see that she was upset, even though she was trying to hide it. "What happened?" he asked, as she reached the door. Amara walked inside and put her purse down. She took a deep breath. "I got pulled over." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. They had been through this before. For what? For being black in a nice neighborhood, apparently. Amara's voice was shaking now. The calm she had maintained during the traffic stop was breaking. "He pulled me over for nothing, asked me whose car I was driving, asked how I could afford it, tried to make me get out of the car." Marcus pulled her into a hug. He could feel her trembling. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" "No, I'm fine. I recorded everything, and the neighbors saw it all. Margaret Kim was there. Mr. Walsh came out. Other people were recording too." "Good. We'll need all of that." Amara pulled back and looked at her husband. "He gave me a ticket for failure to comply with a lawful order. It's complete nonsense. I did nothing wrong. We'll fight it. We'll get our lawyer. We'll make sure everyone knows what happened." Amara nodded. She knew Marcus was right. But she was tired. She was tired of having to fight. She was tired of being treated like a criminal when she had done nothing wrong. She ran a successful company. She helped people. She gave back to her community. And still a cop had pulled her over and treated her like trash. "I need to send the video to my lawyer tonight," Amara said. "And I need to file a formal complaint with the Police Oversight Commission tomorrow." "You sit on the commission," Marcus said. "I know, which makes this even worse. That cop had no idea who I was. He just saw a black woman in a nice car and assumed I was up to something. Their daughter Zoe came down the stairs. She was 12 years old, smart and observant. She could tell something was wrong. "Mom, are you okay?" Amara forced a smile. "I'm fine, baby. Just had a long day." But Zoe was not fooled. She had heard enough of the conversation. "Did a cop stop you?" Amara and Marcus looked at each other. They had always been honest with their children about racism. They had to be. It was not safe to pretend it did not exist. "Yes," Amara said. "But I'm okay. Nothing bad happened. I just want you to remember something. If you ever get pulled over by the police, you stay calm. You keep your hands visible. You record everything if you can. And you never ever argue with them even if they're wrong, you understand?" Zoe nodded, but there were tears in her eyes. "That's not fair." "No, baby, it's not fair. But that's the world we live in. And we have to be smart about how we handle it." Marcus put his arm around his daughter. "Your mom did everything right tonight. She stayed calm. She knew her rights. She got everything on video. And now we're going to make sure that cop faces consequences for what he did. Amara went upstairs to her office. She sat at her desk and opened her laptop. She transferred the video from her phone to her computer. Then she watched it. Seeing it again made her angry all over again. The way Morrison had talked to her, the way he had looked at her, the way he had assumed she was a criminal. She wrote an email to her lawyer. She attached the video. She explained everything that had happened. Then she sent it. Her lawyer would know what to do. Next, she went to the website for the Police Oversight Commission. She filled out the formal complaint form. She described the traffic stop in detail. She noted that there was video evidence. She noted that there were multiple witnesses. She attached her video. Then she submitted the form. It was late now, after 11 at night, but Amara could not sleep. She was too angry, too frustrated, too hurt. She went downstairs and made herself a cup of tea. She sat at the kitchen table in the dark, holding the warm cup in her hands. Marcus came downstairs and found her there. He sat down across from her. "You can't let this eat at you." "I know," Amara said, "but I keep thinking about all the people this happens to who don't have what I have. What if I wasn't the CEO of a company? What if I didn't sit on the Police Oversight Commission? What if I didn't have a lawyer and resources and a supportive community? What would have happened to me?" "Nothing good," Marcus said quietly. "Exactly. And that's what makes me so angry. I got lucky tonight because of who I am. But there are hundreds, thousands of black people who get pulled over for no reason, and they don't have the power to fight back. They just have to take it. They just have to accept being treated like criminals. Which is why you have to fight this. Not just for you, but for all of them." Amara looked at her husband. He was right. She had a platform. She had a voice. She had resources. She had to use them. Not just to clear her own name, but to make sure this did not happen to other people. While Amara sat in her kitchen, Officer Morrison was still on duty. But his night had gotten much worse. After Amara drove away, Chen had pulled him aside again. "You need to go back to the station and write your report," Chen had said. "And you need to be very careful about what you say. Because your dashcam caught everything. And so did about 5 other cameras." Morrison had driven back to the police station. He sat at his desk staring at his computer screen. He had to write a report about the traffic stop. But what could he say? He had no good reason for pulling Amara over. He had no probable cause. He had nothing. He started typing. He wrote that he had observed a vehicle driving through a residential neighborhood. He wrote that the driver appeared nervous. He wrote that he had conducted a routine traffic stop. He wrote that the driver had been uncooperative and hostile. But even as he typed, he knew it was weak. The dashcam would show that Amara had not looked nervous. It would show that she had been completely calm and polite. It would show that she had asked reasonable questions about why she was being stopped. Morrison saved the report and submitted it. Then he went home. He lived alone in a small apartment. He had been married once, but his wife had left him 5 years ago. She had said he was too angry all the time, too bitter, too hateful. He sat on his couch and turned on the television, but he could not focus on what was playing. He kept thinking about the traffic stop, about the look in Chen's eyes when she realized who Amara was, about all those cameras recording him. His phone buzzed. It was a text from another officer, someone he sometimes had drinks with. "Dude, you're all over social media. What did you do?" Morrison's heart sank. He opened his phone and went to Facebook. There it was. A video of the traffic stop. It had been posted by James Park, one of the neighbors. The caption read, "Black woman pulled over for no reason in our neighborhood. This is wrong." The video already had hundreds of views. People were commenting. Most of the comments were angry. They were calling Morrison racist. They were demanding he be fired. They were tagging the police department. Morrison felt sick. He searched for more videos. He found one on Twitter posted by Margaret Kim. He found another on Instagram. Each video was slightly different, shot from a different angle. But they all showed the same thing. Morrison pulling over a woman who had done nothing wrong. Morrison demanding answers to invasive questions. Morrison trying to order her out of her car. And in every video, Amara looked calm. She looked reasonable. She looked like the victim, which she was. And Morrison looked like the bad guy, which he was. He put down his phone. His hands were shaking. This was bad. This was really bad. He thought about all the complaints that had been filed against him over the years. 7 complaints, all of them from black drivers, all of them claiming racial profiling, all of them dismissed because there was not enough evidence. But this time there was evidence. Lots of evidence. Video from multiple angles. Witnesses who vouched for the driver. And the driver herself was someone important. Someone with power. Someone on the Police Oversight Commission. Morrison knew he was in trouble. Real trouble. The kind of trouble that could end his career. Maybe the kind of trouble that could lead to criminal charges. He had filed a false report. The ticket he had given Amara was bogus. Everyone would see that. At the police station, Captain Raymond Torres was working late in his office. He was doing paperwork when his phone rang. It was the police chief. "Ray, we have a problem," the chief said. "Have you seen social media in the last hour?" "No, why?" "One of your officers pulled over a woman tonight, a black woman. It's all over Facebook and Twitter. The videos look bad. Really bad." Torres pulled up Facebook on his computer. He found the video immediately. He watched it. His face grew more and more serious as he watched. When it was over, he sat back in his chair. "Who's the officer?" the chief asked. Torres checked the computer system. He pulled up the traffic stops from tonight. He saw Morrison's report. "Derek Morrison." The chief was quiet for a moment. "Isn't he the one with all those complaints?" "Yes. 7 complaints in the past 5 years, all racial profiling allegations, all dismissed due to lack of evidence." "Well, now we have evidence, lots of it, and it gets worse. Do you know who the driver is?" "No." "Dr. Amara Johnson. She's the CEO of Tech Bridge Solutions, and she sits on the Police Oversight Commission." Torres closed his eyes. This was a nightmare. "I'll start an investigation first thing tomorrow morning. Make it thorough, and make it fast. This is going to be a media circus." The chief hung up. Torres sat at his desk for a long time watching the video over and over. He could see everything. Morrison had no reason to pull her over. He had been aggressive and confrontational. He had asked inappropriate questions. And worst of all, he had given her a bogus ticket rather than admit he was wrong. Torres made a note to call Morrison into his office first thing in the morning. He also made a note to contact Internal Affairs. This was going to require a full investigation, and depending on what they found, Morrison might lose his job. He might even face criminal charges. The next morning, the story had exploded. Local news stations had picked it up. The video was everywhere. Dr. Amara Johnson, prominent CEO and community leader, had been racially profiled by a police officer. The story had everything: race, power, injustice, and video evidence. Amara's phone was ringing constantly. Reporters wanted interviews. Community activists wanted her to speak at rallies. Friends and colleagues were calling to offer support. Amara sat at her kitchen table drinking coffee. Her phone kept buzzing with notifications. The video had been viewed over 50,000 times overnight. News trucks were starting to park on her street. She had already received calls from 3 local television stations and 2 newspapers. Her lawyer, David Chen, had called at 7 in the morning. "Amara, this is going to get big. Really big. You need to decide how you want to handle it." "What do you mean?" Amara asked. "You have options. You can stay quiet and let the investigation play out, or you can use your platform to speak out about what happened. Both choices have consequences." Amara thought about it. Part of her wanted to stay quiet. She wanted this to go away. She wanted to go back to her normal life. But another part of her knew that staying quiet would be wrong. This happened to people every day. Most of them did not have the power to speak up. She did. "I'll speak," Amara said, "but I want to do it right. I don't want this to be about me wanting attention. I want this to be about changing things." "I understand," David said. "I'll set up a press conference for this afternoon. We'll do it at my office. That way you control the environment. Marcus came into the kitchen. He had been watching the news. They're leading with your story on every channel. Amara sighed. I know. David is setting up a press conference for this afternoon. Are you sure you want to do that? Once you go public, there's no taking it back. I'm sure. This isn't just about me. How many other people has Morrison pulled over for no reason? How many of them were too scared to fight back? How many of them didn't have video evidence? Marcus nodded. He understood. His wife had never been someone who backed down from a fight, especially when the fight was about something important. At the police station, Morrison was called into Captain Torres's office at 8 in the morning. He walked down the hallway with his stomach in knots. He knew this was coming. He had barely slept. Torres was sitting behind his desk. He did not smile when Morrison walked in. Sit down. Morrison sat. He tried to look calm, but his hands were shaking. I've reviewed the dashcam footage from your traffic stop last night, Torres said. I've also seen the videos that witnesses posted online, and I've read Dr. Johnson's complaint. Do you want to tell me what happened? Morrison cleared his throat. I saw a vehicle that looked suspicious. I conducted a routine traffic stop. The driver was uncooperative. Torres leaned forward. Derek, I watched the video. That woman did nothing wrong. She was not speeding. She did not run any lights. She did not swerve. She drove perfectly. So explain to me what was suspicious. Morrison hesitated. He could not say what he was really thinking. He could not say that a black woman in an expensive car in that neighborhood looked wrong to him. He could not admit to racial profiling. She just looked out of place, Morrison said. Out of place? She lives in that neighborhood. She was 2 blocks from her house. She had just come from a community board meeting. Multiple neighbors vouched for her. So how exactly was she out of place? Morrison said nothing. There was nothing he could say that would make this better. Torres pulled up the video on his computer. He turned the screen so Morrison could see it. Watch this with me. Watch what you did. They watched the dashcam footage together. It showed Amara driving normally. It showed Morrison following her for 2 blocks. It showed him turning on his lights and pulling her over. The timestamp showed that he had sat in his car for 3 minutes before approaching her vehicle. What were you doing for 3 minutes? Torres asked. Running her plates. Checking for warrants. And what did you find? Nothing. Exactly, nothing. No warrants, no stolen vehicle, no outstanding tickets, nothing. And yet you still approached her vehicle with your hand on your weapon. Why? Morrison had no good answer. Officer safety. Officer safety during a routine traffic stop with a woman who had done nothing wrong? Derek, I've been doing this job for 25 years. I know what racial profiling looks like, and that's what this was. Morrison's face went red. I was just doing my job. No, you weren't. Your job is to protect and serve. Your job is to enforce the law fairly. Your job is not to harass people because of the color of their skin. Torres picked up a folder from his desk. This is your file. You have 7 previous complaints. All racial profiling. All from black drivers. All dismissed because there wasn't enough evidence. But now we have evidence. We have multiple videos. We have witnesses. We have a victim who is credible and powerful. And we have your own dash cam showing that you had no cause to pull her over. Morrison's stomach was churning. He felt sick. What happens now? Internal Affairs is opening a formal investigation. As of right now, you're on administrative leave. You need to turn in your badge and your weapon. You'll be paid during the investigation, but you're not to come to work. You're not to wear your uniform. And you're not to have any contact with Dr. Johnson or any of the witnesses. Morrison stood up. His legs felt weak. This isn't fair. I've been a cop for 15 years, and for 15 years you've been pulling over black people for no reason. The difference is that now we have proof. Now we can't ignore it anymore. Now you have to face consequences for your actions. Morrison left the office. He turned in his badge and gun to the desk sergeant. Other officers watched him walk out. Some of them looked sympathetic. They thought Torres was being too hard on him. They thought Morrison was just doing his job. But Officer Sandra Chen was not one of them. She had given her statement to Internal Affairs that morning. She had told them everything she saw. She had told them that Morrison had no probable cause. She had told them that he had been aggressive and confrontational. She had told them the truth. Some of the other officers were angry at her. They thought she should have protected Morrison. They thought she should have backed him up. But Chen knew she had done the right thing. Being a good cop meant telling the truth even when it hurt. At noon, Jackson Park, a local news reporter, was sitting in his car outside the police station. He had covered crime and police issues for 10 years. He knew a big story when he saw one. And this was huge. He had spent the morning reviewing all the videos. He had interviewed several of the neighbors. He had spoken to community activists. Everyone was saying the same thing. This was a clear case of racial profiling, and the victim was not someone who could be ignored or dismissed. Jackson's phone rang. It was his editor. "Where are you on the Johnson story?" "I'm at the police station. Internal Affairs just arrived. Morrison is on leave." "Good, keep digging. I want a full investigation piece. I want to know how many other people Morrison has pulled over. I want to know why all those previous complaints were dismissed. I want to know if this is a pattern." "It is a pattern. I've already found 3 other black drivers who filed complaints about Morrison. None of them went anywhere." "Then that's your story. This isn't just about one traffic stop. This is about systemic failure to hold officers accountable." Jackson smiled. This was the kind of journalism he loved, the kind that made a difference. "I'll have it ready for tomorrow's paper." At 2 in the afternoon, Amara stood in front of a room full of reporters. David Chen, her lawyer, stood next to her. Cameras flashed. Microphones were pointed at her face. She took a deep breath and began to speak. "My name is Dr. Amara Johnson. I'm the CEO of TechBridge Solutions, and I serve on this city's Police Oversight Commission. Last night, I was pulled over by Officer Derek Morrison for no reason. I had committed no traffic violation. I was simply driving home from a community board meeting in the neighborhood where I've lived for 5 years." She paused. The room was completely silent. Every reporter was hanging on her words. "Officer Morrison approached my vehicle aggressively. He demanded my license and registration without explaining why he had stopped me. When I asked, he became hostile. He began asking me personal questions about how I could afford my car. He implied that I didn't belong in my own neighborhood. He then ordered me to exit my vehicle without probable cause. When I exercised my legal right to ask why, he called for backup and claimed I was being hostile." Amara held up the ticket Morrison had given her. "He gave me a citation for failure to comply with a lawful order, but his order was not lawful. He had no cause to pull me over. He had no cause to search my vehicle. He had no cause to order me out of my car. This ticket is worthless, and we both know it." A reporter raised her hand. "Dr. Johnson, why do you think Officer Morrison pulled you over?" Amara looked directly at the camera. "I think Officer Morrison pulled me over because I'm a black woman driving an expensive car in a predominantly white neighborhood. I think he made assumptions about me based on the color of my skin. I think he racially profiled me, and I think I'm not the first person he's done this to." Another reporter spoke up. "What do you want to happen to Officer Morrison?" "I want accountability. I want a full investigation into this incident and into all the previous complaints filed against him. I want to know why those complaints were dismissed. I want to know if there's a pattern of racial profiling in our police department. And if there is, I want it to stop." David Chen stepped forward. "We will be pursuing all legal options available to Dr. Johnson. We will be filing a federal civil rights lawsuit against Officer Morrison and the police department. We will be demanding policy changes to prevent this from happening to others. And we will not stop until we see real, meaningful change." The questions kept coming. Amara answered them all calmly and clearly. She talked about the fear she felt during the traffic stop. She talked about having to teach her children how to interact with police. She talked about the privilege of being someone with resources and power, and how most people who experience this don't have what she has. After 30 minutes, David ended the press conference. But the damage to Morrison and the police department had been done. The story was everywhere. National news outlets were picking it up. Social media was exploding with comments and shares. The mayor's office called the police chief. "We need to handle this now. This is making the city look bad." The police chief called Captain Torres. "I want daily updates on the investigation. I want this done right. And I want it done fast." Torres called Sergeant Lisa Ramirez from Internal Affairs. "This is your top priority. I want you to dig into every traffic stop Morrison has ever made. I want you to interview every person who filed a complaint. I want you to find the truth." Ramirez nodded. She had been an internal affairs investigator for 12 years. She had seen a lot of bad cops. And from what she had seen so far, Morrison was one of them. This investigation was going to end his career. She was sure of it. 3 days after the traffic stop, Sergeant Lisa Ramirez sat in her office surrounded by files. She had been digging into Derek Morrison's record since the morning after the incident. What she found was disturbing. Morrison had been a police officer for 15 years. During that time, he had made over 1,200 traffic stops. Lisa had spent 2 days analyzing those stops. The pattern was clear and undeniable. 68% of Morrison's traffic stops involved black drivers. In a city where black people made up only 22% of the population, this was a massive disparity. White drivers in the same neighborhoods, driving the same types of cars, were almost never pulled over by Morrison. Lisa had also tracked down the 7 people who had filed formal complaints against Morrison. She called each of them. Their stories were remarkably similar to Amara's. The first person she spoke to was Marcus Williams, a 35-year-old accountant. Morrison had pulled him over 2 years ago while he was driving to work. He said my car matched the description of a stolen vehicle, Marcus told Lisa over the phone. But when I asked what the description was, he couldn't give me details. He made me sit on the side of the road for 40 minutes while he searched my car. He didn't find anything because there was nothing to find. I filed a complaint, but nothing happened. The second person was Jennifer Brown, a 42-year-old nurse. Morrison had pulled her over 18 months ago in the hospital parking lot where she worked. He said I was driving erratically, Jennifer said. But I wasn't. I had just finished a 12-hour shift and I was exhausted, but I was driving fine. He made me do a sobriety test even though I told him I don't drink. He kept asking if I had drugs in the car. It was humiliating. My coworkers saw the whole thing. The stories went on and on. 7 complaints, 7 black drivers, 7 incidents of racial profiling, and all 7 complaints had been dismissed due to insufficient evidence. Lisa made notes. She copied files. She created a timeline. The evidence was overwhelming. Morrison had been racially profiling black drivers for years, and the department had done nothing about it. She wrote her preliminary report and sent it to Captain Torres. Then she continued digging. She wanted to know who had dismissed those complaints. She wanted to know why no one had seen the pattern. She wanted to know how Morrison had been allowed to continue his behavior for so long. At his apartment, Morrison was going crazy. He had been on administrative leave for 3 days. He had nothing to do except sit at home and watch the news coverage of his traffic stop. Every channel was talking about it. Social media was destroying him. People were calling for him to be fired. Some were even calling for him to be arrested. His phone rang. It was his union representative, Tom Bradley. "Derek, we need to talk about your situation." "Can you make this go away?" Morrison asked. He sounded desperate. "No, this is bad, Derek. This is really bad. The video evidence is damning. The previous complaints create a pattern, and the victim is someone with real power and credibility. The best I can do is try to negotiate your resignation instead of termination." "Resignation? I didn't do anything wrong." "Derek, you pulled over a woman for no reason. You gave her a bogus ticket, and you did it to someone on the Police Oversight Commission. You're done. The question is whether you go out with some dignity or whether you get fired and potentially face criminal charges." Morrison hung up. He threw his phone across the room. This couldn't be happening. He was a good cop. He had served for 15 years. He had made arrests. He had caught criminals. And now his career was over because of one traffic stop? But deep down, Morrison knew it wasn't just one traffic stop. It was 1,200 traffic stops. It was 7 complaints. It was 15 years of letting his prejudices guide his actions. He had always told himself he was just being careful, just doing his job, just keeping people safe. But the truth was different. The truth was that he had been racist. He had targeted black people because he assumed they were criminals. He had profiled them. He had harassed them. And he had gotten away with it for years because no one had the power or the resources to fight back. Until Amara Johnson. At City Hall, Mayor Patricia Hayes was meeting with the police chief and the city attorney. The mayor was a black woman herself. She had worked hard to get elected 2 years ago. She had promised police reform, and now she had a major scandal on her hands. "Tell me where we are with the investigation," the mayor said. Police Chief Robert Martinez pulled out his tablet. "Internal Affairs has found a clear pattern of racial profiling. Morrison has pulled over black drivers at a rate 3 times higher than their percentage of the population. 7 formal complaints have been filed against him over 5 years. All were dismissed without proper investigation." "Why were they dismissed?" the mayor asked. "That's what we're trying to figure out," Chief Martinez said. "It looks like the sergeant who reviewed the complaints marked them as unsubstantiated. He claimed there wasn't enough evidence, but he never actually investigated. He just took Morrison's word for it." "Who's the sergeant?" "Frank Wilson. He retired last year." The mayor shook her head. This was worse than she thought. It wasn't just one bad cop. It was a system that had protected that bad cop for years. "What about Dr. Johnson?" the mayor asked. "Has anyone from the city reached out to her?" "Not yet," the city attorney said. "We've been advised not to contact her directly because of the potential lawsuit." "That's ridiculous," the mayor said. "She's a respected member of this community. She sits on the Police Oversight Commission. She deserves a personal apology from this city. I'm calling her today." That afternoon, Amara's phone rang. The caller ID said City Hall. She answered. "Dr. Johnson, this is Mayor Hayes. I wanted to call you personally to apologize for what happened to you. What Officer Morrison did was wrong. It was unacceptable. And I want you to know that we're taking this seriously." Amara was surprised. She hadn't expected a call from the mayor. "Thank you, Mayor Hayes. I appreciate you reaching out. I've reviewed the Internal Affairs report. There's a clear pattern of racial profiling, not just with you, but with many other people. Morrison is going to face serious consequences. But more importantly, we need to fix the system that allowed this to happen for so long." "I agree," Amara said. "This isn't just about one officer. This is about a culture that dismissed complaints and protected bad behavior. That's why I want to work with you and the Police Oversight Commission to implement real reforms. Mandatory bias training, better complaint review processes, more accountability. Will you help me?" Amara thought about it. Part of her wanted to just walk away. She had her own company to run, she had her own life. But she knew she couldn't walk away. Too many people were depending on her to fight for change. "Yes," Amara said. "I'll help. But I want real change. Not just talk. Not just policies on paper. Real, meaningful change." "You have my word," the mayor said. After the call, Amara sat in her office thinking. The mayor's call was a good sign. It meant the city was taking this seriously. It meant there might be real change. But Amara had heard promises before. She would believe it when she saw it. Her assistant knocked on her door. "Dr. Johnson, there's someone here to see you. Officer Sandra Chen." Amara was surprised. What did Officer Chen want? "Send her in." Chen walked into the office. She was in uniform but looked nervous. "Dr. Johnson, thank you for seeing me. I know you're busy." "Have a seat, Officer Chen. What can I do for you?" Chen sat down. "I wanted to apologize for what happened, and for all the times it happened before when no one did anything about it." "You didn't pull me over," Amara said. "You don't need to apologize." "But I knew," Chen said. "I've worked with Morrison for 3 years. I knew he had complaints. I knew he targeted black drivers. I never said anything. I told myself it wasn't my place. I told myself the system would handle it. But the system didn't handle it, and people kept getting hurt." Amara studied Chen's face. She saw genuine remorse there. "What changed?" "Seeing you that night," seeing how he treated you, seeing all those neighbors vouching for you and knowing he didn't care. He was going to give you that ticket no matter what. He was going to punish you for challenging him. And I realized that if I didn't speak up, I was part of the problem. So you gave a statement to Internal Affairs? Yes. I told them everything. The other officers are angry at me. They say I broke the code. They say I betrayed Morrison. But I don't care. What he did was wrong. What the department did by protecting him was wrong. And someone had to tell the truth. Amara felt respect for this woman. It took courage to go against your fellow officers. It took courage to tell the truth when everyone else wanted to protect their own. Thank you for telling the truth, Amara said. That took guts. Chen nodded. I also wanted to ask you something. I know you're working with the mayor on police reforms. I'd like to help. I want to be part of making things better. I want to make sure what happened to you doesn't happen to anyone else. Amara smiled. This was good. Having officers who wanted to change from the inside would make the reforms more effective. I'd welcome your help, Officer Chen. After Chen left, Amara got back to work, but her mind was on everything that had happened. In just 3 days, her life had changed. She had gone from a successful CEO minding her own business to the center of a citywide conversation about police reform. She didn't ask for this. She didn't want this. But she had it, and she was going to make the most of it. That evening, Jackson Park's investigative article came out in the newspaper. The headline read, Pattern of Racial Profiling, How One Officer Targeted Black Drivers for Years While Department Looked Away. The article was detailed and damning. Jackson had interviewed all 7 people who had filed complaints. He had analyzed Morrison's traffic stop data. He had obtained internal memos showing that supervisors had been warned about Morrison's behavior but had done nothing. The article named names. It showed timelines. It included quotes from victims. It exposed the entire system of protection that had allowed Morrison to continue his behavior for 15 years. The article went viral. National news outlets picked it up. Civil rights organizations issued statements. Protesters gathered outside the police station demanding justice. Morrison read the article in his apartment. Every word felt like a punch to the gut. Seeing his actions laid out so clearly, seeing the pain he had caused, seeing the lives he had disrupted, for the first time Morrison felt something he hadn't felt before. Shame, real deep shame. Not shame that he got caught. Shame for what he had done. Shame for the person he had been. 2 weeks after the traffic stop, the Internal Affairs investigation was complete. Sergeant Lisa Ramirez had compiled a 200-page report. She sat across from Captain Torres and Police Chief Martinez as they reviewed her findings. The evidence is overwhelming, Lisa said. Morrison violated department policy on multiple occasions. He conducted traffic stops without probable cause. He used his position to harass and intimidate citizens, and he filed false reports to cover his actions. Chief Martinez flipped through the report. His face grew darker with each page. How did this go on for so long? The complaint review process was broken, Lisa explained. Sergeant Frank Wilson was responsible for reviewing complaints against officers in Morrison's unit. Wilson is now retired, but I interviewed him. He admitted that he gave officers the benefit of the doubt. He said he believed his officers unless there was clear evidence they were lying. In other words, he protected them, Torres said. Yes, Wilson dismissed all 7 complaints against Morrison without conducting proper investigations. He never interviewed witnesses. He never reviewed dashcam footage. He just asked Morrison for his side of the story and accepted it as truth. Chief Martinez closed the report. What's your recommendation? Termination. Immediately. Morrison's actions violated multiple policies. He brought dishonor to the badge, and his behavior created liability for the department. He needs to be fired. What about criminal charges? Torres asked. Lisa nodded. I've forwarded my findings to the district attorney's office. Morrison filed false reports. That's a crime. Whether they choose to prosecute is up to them, but there's enough evidence for charges. Chief Martinez stood up. Set up a hearing for tomorrow. Morrison will have a chance to defend himself, but based on this report, I don't see how he can. Prepare termination paperwork. The next day, Morrison sat in a conference room at the police station. His union representative sat next to him. Across the table were Chief Martinez, Captain Torres, and Lisa Ramirez. A recording device sat in the center of the table. Chief Martinez read from a document. Officer Derek Morrison, you are here to respond to allegations of misconduct, including racial profiling, conducting traffic stops without probable cause, harassment, and filing false reports. You have the right to respond to these allegations, do you understand? Morrison nodded. His face was pale. He had barely eaten or slept in 2 weeks. He looked like a different person from the confident officer who had pulled over Amara Johnson. Lisa presented the evidence. She showed the data on his traffic stops. She played excerpts from interviews with people he had pulled over. She showed his dashcam footage from multiple stops where he had no reason to pull people over. She showed his false reports. Each piece of evidence was like a hammer blow. Morrison sat there, unable to deny any of it. It was all true, all documented, all recorded. When Lisa finished, Chief Martinez looked at Morrison. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Morrison's union representative whispered something to him. Morrison shook his head. He looked at the chief. No defense, Morrison said quietly. Everything in that report is true. I did profile people. I did pull over black drivers without cause. I did file false reports. I've been doing it for years. The room was silent. No one had expected Morrison to admit it so easily. Why? Torres asked. Why did you do it? Morrison looked down at his hands. Because I was taught to. When I was a rookie, the older cops told me to watch out for black people in white neighborhoods. They said those were the people who committed crimes. They said I should pull them over, check them out, make sure they belonged there. And I believed them. He paused. His voice was shaking now. At first I thought I was just being a good cop, just keeping people safe. But over time it became automatic. I saw a black person in a nice car, and I assumed they were criminals. I didn't even think about it anymore, it was just what I did. Chief Martinez leaned forward. And when people filed complaints, when they said you were targeting them because of their race, what did you think then? I thought they were lying. I thought they were just trying to get out of trouble. I never considered that maybe I was the one in the wrong. Until now, Lisa said. Morrison nodded. Until now. Until I saw all the videos from that night. Until I read the newspaper article. Until I saw how my actions looked from the outside. I always thought I was the good guy. But I was wrong. I was the problem. The union representative tried to speak, but Morrison held up his hand. Don't. I'm done making excuses. I'm done trying to justify what I did. I targeted people because of their skin color. That's racism. And I'm guilty. Chief Martinez looked at his colleagues. This was unprecedented. Officers almost never admitted guilt. They almost always fought, denied, made excuses. But Morrison was accepting responsibility. Officer Morrison, based on the evidence presented and your admission of guilt, you are hereby terminated from the police department effective immediately. You will turn in all department property, including your uniform. Your benefits will be processed according to policy, and this termination will be noted in your permanent record. Morrison nodded. He had expected this. He deserved this. Additionally, the chief continued, your case has been referred to the district attorney for potential criminal charges. You may face prosecution for filing false reports. Morrison stood up. He took off his badge and placed it on the table. Then he took off his gun belt and placed that on the table too. He looked at the items for a long moment. 15 years of his life. Gone. He walked out of the police station for the last time. News cameras were waiting outside. Reporters shouted questions at him. He kept his head down and walked to his car. He drove home in silence. At the district attorney's office, prosecutor Sarah Williams was reviewing Morrison's case. She had been a prosecutor for 12 years. She specialized in public corruption cases, and this case interested her. Morrison had admitted to filing false reports. That was a misdemeanor, punishable by up to a year in jail and fines. Sarah could charge him. She could probably get a conviction, but would it accomplish anything? She thought about the bigger picture. Morrison was already fired. He would never be a cop again. Charging him criminally might feel satisfying, but it wouldn't change the system. It wouldn't prevent other officers from doing the same thing. Sarah made a decision. She called Amara's lawyer, David Chen. I wanted to talk to you about the Morrison case. I'm considering charging him with filing false reports, but I wanted to get your client's input first. David was surprised. Prosecutors usually didn't consult with victims before filing charges. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that putting Morrison in jail doesn't fix the problem. The problem is bigger than one officer. It's the system that protected him. It's the culture that taught him to profile people. If we really want to create change, we need to focus on that. What do you propose? What if Morrison agreed to participate in a restorative justice program? What if he had to meet with the people he victimized? What if he had to speak publicly about his actions and help train other officers about implicit bias? Would that be more meaningful than 6 months in jail? David thought about it. I'd have to talk to Dr. Johnson, but I think she might be interested. She's been saying all along that this is about changing the system, not just punishing one person. Sarah called a few of the other victims Morrison had profiled. She explained her idea. Most of them were interested. They wanted Morrison to understand what he had done. They wanted him to help prevent it from happening to others. 2 days later, Sarah sat down with Morrison and his attorney. She explained the restorative justice program. Morrison would have to meet with his victims. He would have to listen to how his actions affected them. He would have to publicly apologize. And he would have to spend 2 years working with the police department on bias training. If he completed the program, she would not file criminal charges. If he refused or failed to complete it, she would prosecute him. Morrison's attorney advised him to take the deal. Morrison agreed. The first meeting was scheduled for the following week. Morrison would meet with all 8 of his victims together. Amara would be there. So would Marcus Williams, Jennifer Brown, and the others. A trained mediator would facilitate the conversation. Morrison was terrified. He had admitted his guilt to his supervisors, but admitting it to the people he had hurt? That would be much harder. The day of the meeting arrived. Morrison walked into a conference room at the community center. 8 people sat around a table, 8 black men and women whose lives he had disrupted. They all looked at him with a mixture of anger, hurt, and curiosity. Amara sat at the head of the table. She looked calm and professional, but Morrison could see the pain in her eyes. He had caused that pain. The mediator, Dr. James Peterson, started the session. We're here today for a restorative justice process. Officer Morrison has agreed to listen to how his actions affected each of you. He has agreed to take responsibility for what he did, and he has agreed to work toward making things right. Who would like to start? Marcus Williams spoke first. You pulled me over 2 years ago. You accused me of driving a stolen car. You made me wait on the side of the road for 40 minutes while you searched my car. My kids were in the back seat. They were scared. They kept asking why the police were hurting Daddy. I had to explain to my 8-year-old son that sometimes police officers treat black people differently. That's a conversation no parent should have to have. Morrison listened. He felt sick. He remembered that traffic stop. He had been so sure the car was stolen. But it wasn't. Marcus was just a father driving his kids home from school. Jennifer Brown went next. You pulled me over in front of my workplace. My co-workers saw everything. For weeks after, people treated me differently. They looked at me like I might be a criminal. I'm a nurse. I save lives. But because you pulled me over and searched my car, people questioned whether I was trustworthy. You damaged my reputation for no reason. One by one, they told their stories. Each story was different, but they all had the same theme. Morrison had treated them like criminals when they had done nothing wrong. He had humiliated them. He had frightened them. He had made them feel less than human. Finally, it was Amara's turn. She looked directly at Morrison. You pulled me over because you didn't think I belonged in my own neighborhood. You didn't think a black woman could own an expensive car legally. You assumed I was a criminal. And when I challenged you, you tried to punish me. You wrote me a bogus ticket because your pride was hurt. Morrison nodded. Tears were running down his face now. You're right. All of you are right. I did those things, and I can't take them back. I can't undo the harm I caused. All I can do is say I'm sorry, and I'm so sorry. Amara leaned forward. Sorry is not enough. Sorry doesn't change anything. What are you going to do to make sure this never happens again? Morrison wiped his eyes. He looked at each person around the table. Their faces showed pain, anger, and something else. They were waiting to see if his apology was real or just words. I'm going to help change the system, Morrison said. His voice was stronger now. I'm going to work with the police department on training. I'm going to tell other officers about my mistakes. I'm going to make sure they understand what racial profiling really looks like and how much it hurts people. How do we know you mean it? Marcus asked. How do we know you're not just saying what we want to hear so you can avoid jail? Morrison took a deep breath. You don't know. I can't prove it with words. I can only prove it with actions. And I'm asking you to give me a chance to do that. Dr. Peterson, the mediator, spoke up. Part of the restorative justice agreement is that Officer Morrison will meet with this group every month for the next 2 years. You'll be able to see his progress. You'll be able to hold him accountable. If he's not following through, you can tell the district attorney and he'll face criminal charges. Amara looked at the others. They were all thinking the same thing. Could they trust Morrison? Could a racist cop really change? Jennifer Brown spoke. I want to believe people can change. I work in healthcare. I see people overcome addictions, change their habits, turn their lives around. But change is hard, and it requires honesty. So I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Do you still think black people are more likely to be criminals? The room went silent. Everyone looked at Morrison. This was the real question. Had his beliefs actually changed? Or was he just sorry he got caught? Morrison thought carefully before answering. I'm working on it. I'd be lying if I said I didn't still have those thoughts sometimes. When I see a black person in a situation that used to trigger my suspicion, the old thoughts come up. But now I recognize them. Now I question them. Now I remind myself that those thoughts are wrong. They're based on prejudice, not facts. So no, I don't think black people are more likely to be criminals. But I'm still fighting against 15 years of conditioning. Amara nodded slowly. That was an honest answer. Not the perfect answer, but an honest one. And honesty was important. Okay, Amara said. We'll give you a chance. But understand this. We're not doing this for you. We're doing this because if you can change, if you can help other officers change, then maybe fewer people will go through what we went through. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, there were tears, difficult conversations, and moments of real connection. Morrison left with a reading list about racism and implicit bias. He left with a commitment to attend therapy to work through his prejudices. And he left with the knowledge that he had a long way to go. 3 months later, Morrison stood in front of a room full of police officers. It was a mandatory training session on implicit bias. Captain Torres had arranged it as part of the department's reforms. Officer Sandra Chen sat in the front row. She had helped develop the training program. Morrison was nervous. He was about to tell a room full of his former colleagues that he was racist, that he had abused his power, that he had harmed innocent people, and that they needed to examine their own behavior. He knew they wouldn't like it. He knew some of them would be angry. But this was part of his agreement. This was part of making things right. My name is Derek Morrison, he began. I was a police officer for 15 years. I was fired 3 months ago for racial profiling. And I deserved it. The room shifted uncomfortably. Some officers looked angry. Others looked curious. Chen nodded encouragingly. I pulled over black drivers without cause hundreds of times. I assumed they were criminals because of the color of their skin. I told myself I was just being a good cop, just keeping people safe. But I was wrong. I was racist. And my racism hurt a lot of innocent people. He told them about his traffic stops. He told them about the complaints. He told them about Amara Johnson and how that night changed everything. He told them about the restorative justice meetings and hearing the pain in his victims' voices. Some of you are probably thinking I'm weak, Morrison said. Some of you think I'm betraying police officers by admitting this. But the real betrayal is letting racism continue. The real betrayal is staying silent when you see another officer profile someone because of their skin color. He showed them data. Black drivers in their city were 3 times more likely to be pulled over than white drivers, even though they committed traffic violations at the same rate. Black drivers were 4 times more likely to have their cars searched, but white drivers were more likely to have contraband found. These numbers tell a story, Morrison said. And it's not a good story. It's a story about systemic racism in our department, and we have to change it. After the presentation, the room was quiet. Then an older officer stood up. You expect us to second-guess ourselves every time we pull someone over? You expect us to ignore our instincts? I expect you to examine where your instincts come from, Morrison replied. If your instinct is to pull over black drivers more often than white drivers, then your instincts are based on prejudice, not fact. And yes, you should second-guess those instincts. Officer Chen raised her hand. Derek is right. I've been reviewing traffic stop data for the past 3 months. The pattern is clear. We profile black drivers. We search them more often. We give them tickets for minor violations we'd let slide for white drivers. And it needs to stop. The training session continued for 2 more hours. Some officers were receptive. They admitted they had seen the patterns. They admitted they had concerns about their own behavior. Others were defensive. They insisted they treated everyone equally. They said the data was misleading. But seeds were planted. Conversations were started. And that was the beginning of change. Meanwhile, the Police Oversight Commission was working on policy reforms. Amara attended every meeting. She pushed for strong accountability measures. She pushed for better training. She pushed for a complete overhaul of the complaint review process. The commission proposed new policies. Every traffic stop would be recorded on dashcam and bodycam with no exceptions. Officers who turned off their cameras would face immediate suspension. All traffic stop data would be analyzed quarterly for racial disparities. Officers with patterns of disproportionate stops would be required to undergo additional training and monitoring. The complaint review process was completely restructured. Complaints would no longer be reviewed by supervisors in the same unit as the accused officer. Instead, a civilian review board would investigate all complaints. The board would have subpoena power and the authority to recommend discipline. The proposals faced resistance. The police union opposed them. Some officers said the policies would make it impossible to do their jobs. Some said the policies assumed all officers were racist, but the mayor backed the reforms. The city council backed them. And most importantly, the community backed them. People showed up to public hearings by the hundreds. They told their stories of being profiled. They demanded change. 6 months after Amara's traffic stop, the reforms were passed. The police department was required to implement all of them within 90 days. Chief Martinez held a press conference to announce the changes. Amara stood next to him. So did Officer Chen, who had been promoted to sergeant and put in charge of the new accountability division. These reforms will make our department better, Chief Martinez said. They will help us rebuild trust with the community. They will ensure that every person, regardless of race, is treated fairly and with respect. A reporter asked Amara a question. Dr. Johnson, you could have just filed a lawsuit and moved on. Why did you invest so much time and energy into these reforms? Amara thought about the question. Because I had the power to make a difference and I felt obligated to use it. What happened to me happens to people every day. But most people don't have the platform I have. Most people don't have the resources to fight back. I did this for them. I did this so that maybe my daughter won't have to teach her children how to survive a traffic stop. The reforms were implemented over the following months. Every officer underwent bias training. New complaint review procedures were established. The Civilian Review Board was formed and given real power. The changes were not perfect. There was still resistance. Some officers continued to profile black drivers. Some complaints were still dismissed unfairly. But there was progress. The data showed improvement. Racial disparities in traffic stops began to decrease. More complaints were being properly investigated. Morrison continued his work. He spoke at police academies. He trained veteran officers. He met monthly with his restorative justice group. Slowly, painfully, he was changing. And he was helping others change too. One day Morrison received a letter. It was from Marcus Williams, the accountant he had pulled over 2 years earlier. Morrison opened it nervously. The letter read, "I want you to know that I attended one of your training sessions last month. I came because I wanted to see if you were really committed to change, or if this was just an act. I sat in the back and listened. I watched how the other officers responded to you. I saw some of them get angry and defensive, but I also saw some of them really thinking about their behavior. One young officer came up to you afterward and said your presentation made him realize he had been profiling people without knowing it. That officer might have become like you were, but because of your honesty, he's going to be better. I'm writing to tell you that I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I believe in second chances. Keep doing this work. It matters." Morrison read the letter 3 times. Tears ran down his face. He had hurt this man and his children, and yet Marcus had found it in his heart to forgive him. Morrison folded the letter carefully and put it in his wallet. On difficult days, when he doubted whether his work mattered, he would read it again. Amara's life slowly returned to normal. The media attention faded. She went back to running her company. She still served on the Police Oversight Commission, but the meetings were less dramatic now. One evening, she was driving home from work. She took the same route she had taken the night Morrison pulled her over. She passed the spot where it happened. She thought about that night and everything that came after. Her phone rang. It was Officer Chen, now Sergeant Chen. "Dr. Johnson, I wanted to let you know that we just completed our 6-month review of traffic stop data. Racial disparities have decreased by 37%. Amara smiled. "That's progress." "It is, and it's because of you. Because you had the courage to speak up. Because you demanded change." After the call, Amara sat in her driveway for a moment. The work was not done. Racism did not disappear in 6 months. But things were better. People were paying attention. Officers were being held accountable. And that was something. 1 year after the traffic stop, Amara stood on a stage at the community center. It was packed with people. Police officers sat in the front rows. Community leaders filled the middle section. Citizens who had experienced racial profiling sat in the back. News cameras lined the walls. The Police Oversight Commission was hosting a forum on the first year of reforms. Everyone wanted to know if the changes were working. Everyone wanted to know if real progress had been made. Mayor Hayes spoke first. 1 year ago, Dr. Amara Johnson was pulled over for no reason except the color of her skin. That incident shined a light on a problem that had existed in our city for decades. Today, I'm proud to report on the progress we've made. The mayor presented statistics. Traffic stops of black drivers had decreased by 42%. At the same time, actual crime arrests had increased by 8%. This proved that racial profiling was not necessary for effective policing. Officers could do their jobs better without it. Complaints of racial profiling had decreased by 55%, and the complaints that were filed were now being properly investigated. The Civilian Review Board had reviewed 37 complaints in the past year. They had found misconduct in 12 cases. 4 officers had been disciplined, 1 had been fired. These numbers show progress, the mayor said, but numbers don't tell the full story. Real progress is measured in the experiences of our community members, so I want to invite some people to share their stories. Jennifer Brown, the nurse Morrison had pulled over, walked to the microphone. "A year ago, I would drive to work every day in fear. I was afraid of being pulled over again, afraid of being humiliated in front of my co-workers again. But 6 months ago, I was pulled over for a broken taillight. The officer was professional and respectful. He explained why he stopped me. He gave me a warning and told me to get it fixed. That might not sound like much, but to me, it meant everything. It meant I was treated like a human being." Marcus Williams spoke next. "I don't drive through certain neighborhoods anymore because I'm afraid. I take longer routes to avoid areas where I know I might be profiled. But my son just got his driver's license. I had to have the talk with him about what to do if police pull him over. That talk broke my heart. But I'm hopeful that because of the reforms, maybe my son will face less discrimination than I did. One by one, community members shared their experiences. Some reported improvement. Others said they still faced discrimination. The message was clear. Progress had been made, but more work was needed. Then Amara stepped to the microphone. The room went quiet. Everyone wanted to hear what she had to say. A year ago, I was pulled over while driving home from a meeting. I was scared. I was angry. I was hurt. But I was also determined. I was determined not to let that incident be just another story that gets forgotten. I was determined to turn my pain into purpose. She paused and looked around the room. She saw Officer Chen, now Sergeant Chen, who had helped implement the accountability measures. She saw Captain Torres, who had supported the reforms even when it was difficult. She saw Morrison, sitting in the back, wearing civilian clothes. I want to be clear about something, Amara continued. The reforms we've implemented are important. The decrease in racial profiling is important. But we cannot declare victory and move on. 42% reduction in racially motivated traffic stops means that 58% are still happening. That's still hundreds of black drivers being profiled every year. The room shifted. Some people nodded. Others looked uncomfortable. We've made changes to policies and procedures. We've trained officers. We've created accountability measures. But we haven't fully addressed the culture that allowed racial profiling to thrive for so long. We haven't fully examined the assumptions and prejudices that exist in our society. Amara pulled out her phone. Last week I was driving in the same neighborhood where I was pulled over. A police car started following me. My heart rate increased. My hands started shaking. I checked my speed. I checked my mirrors. I made sure I was doing everything right. After 3 blocks, the officer turned down a different street. He wasn't following me at all. But I had already experienced the fear. The trauma from that night a year ago is still with me. Some people in the audience wiped away tears. They understood. They had experienced that same fear. This is what racial profiling does, Amara said. It doesn't just affect you in the moment. It affects how you move through the world. It affects how you see police officers. It affects how safe you feel in your own neighborhood. And that damage takes time to heal. She looked at Morrison. Derek Morrison is here today. A year ago, he was the officer who pulled me over. Today, he's part of the solution. He's training officers. He's being honest about his mistakes. He's working to change the culture he was part of. His journey is important because it shows that people can change, but it also shows how much work is required. Morrison felt every eye in the room turn to him. He wanted to disappear, but he stayed in his seat. This was part of his commitment. Amara continued. We need more officers like Sergeant Chen, who had the courage to tell the truth even when it was difficult. We need more leaders like Captain Torres and Mayor Hayes who support reform even when it's politically risky. We need more community members who speak up when they see injustice. And we need more people like Derek Morrison who are willing to confront their own prejudices and do the hard work of changing. She paused and looked at her notes. I'm a CEO. I run a successful company. I sit on boards. I have resources and power. When I was pulled over, I knew I had options. I knew I could fight back. But what about the people who don't have what I have? What about the young black man who gets pulled over and doesn't know his rights? What about the single mother who can't afford to miss work to go to court? What about the teenager who gets traumatized by an aggressive officer? Those are the people we're fighting for. Those are the people who need us to keep pushing for change. Those are the people who deserve to drive through their neighborhoods without fear. The room erupted in applause. People stood. The applause lasted for several minutes. After the forum, Morrison approached Amara. He had been dreading this moment all day. Dr. Johnson, thank you for what you said up there. About me. Amara looked at him. A year ago, she had been so angry at this man. Now she felt something different. Not quite forgiveness, but something close to understanding. You're doing good work, Derek, Amara said. I've seen the training sessions you run. I've heard from officers who say you changed their perspective. Keep doing it. I will. I know I can never undo what I did, but I can try to prevent others from making the same mistakes. Amara nodded. That's all any of us can do. Learn from our mistakes and work to be better. Morrison walked away. Amara watched him go. A year ago, she never would have imagined having a civil conversation with the man who had profiled her. But life was full of surprises. Sergeant Chen approached. Dr. Johnson, do you have a minute? They walked outside where it was quieter. Chen looked excited. I wanted to tell you about something we're working on. We're creating a program where officers partner with community organizations. Officers will work directly with youth programs, neighborhood associations, community centers. The goal is to build relationships and trust. That sounds promising, Amara said. How can I help? Your company has expertise in creating technology platforms. We want to build a system where community members can easily provide feedback about their interactions with police. Not just complaints, but positive feedback too. We want officers to see how their actions affect people. Amara thought about it. This was exactly the kind of innovative approach they needed. My team can help with that. Let's set up a meeting next week to discuss details. As Amara drove home that evening, she thought about the past year. It had been exhausting. She had spent countless hours in meetings, giving speeches, reviewing policies, and working with the commission. There had been times when she wanted to quit. Times when the progress seemed too slow. Times when she wondered if anything would really change. But change was happening. Slowly. Imperfectly. But definitely. Her daughter Zoe had noticed the changes too. Mom, you're on the news a lot, Zoe had said recently. Does that bother you? Amara had asked. No, it makes me proud. You stood up for what was right. You didn't just complain about the problem, you tried to fix it. Those words meant more to Amara than any award or recognition. Her daughter was watching. Her daughter was learning. Her daughter would grow up knowing that when you see injustice, you fight it. 2 years after the traffic stop, Amara attended Morrison's final restorative justice meeting. He had completed his 2-year commitment. He had met with his victims every month. He had done the work. The district attorney decided not to file criminal charges. Morrison had fulfilled his obligations. He had genuinely changed. And most importantly, his victims felt that justice had been served in a meaningful way. I'm grateful to all of you, Morrison told the group. You didn't have to give me a second chance. You had every right to demand I go to jail. But instead, you gave me an opportunity to make things right. I hope I've lived up to that opportunity. Marcus Williams spoke. You have. You've done more to combat racial profiling in the past 2 years than most people do in a lifetime. You've used your experience to educate others. That takes courage. After the meeting, Amara and Morrison spoke privately. What will you do now? Amara asked. I'm going to continue the training work. Several police departments in other cities have invited me to speak. I'm also writing a book about my experience. If my story can help other officers recognize their biases, then maybe some good came from my mistakes. I think a lot of good has come from it, Amara said. Not because of what you did, but because of what you did after. You took responsibility. You changed. You helped others change. That matters. 5 years after the traffic stop, Amara stood in the same community center where she had spoken before. But this time the event was different. It was a celebration. The city's racial profiling numbers had decreased by 78%. Officer training programs were now considered models for the nation. Other cities were copying their reforms. The culture of policing in the city had fundamentally changed. Mayor Hayes was there. Chief Martinez was there. Sergeant Chen, now promoted to lieutenant, was there. And Morrison was there, having trained over 5,000 officers across the country. We've come a long way, the mayor said. But Dr. Johnson reminds us that we can never become complacent. There is always more work to do. Amara received an award for her advocacy work. But she knew the real award was the change itself. The real award was that her daughter could now drive through any neighborhood without as much fear. The real award was that Marcus Williams felt comfortable letting his son drive. The real award was that Jennifer Brown no longer dreaded her commute to work. That evening, Amara drove home through her neighborhood. She passed the spot where Morrison had pulled her over 5 years earlier. She thought about everything that had happened since that night. One traffic stop had changed so much. It had ended one man's career. It had started another man's redemption. It had sparked a movement for reform. It had changed how an entire city approached policing. Amara pulled into her driveway. Her family was waiting inside. Dinner was ready. Life was good. And the next time someone was pulled over unfairly, there were systems in place to hold officers accountable. There were voices ready to speak up. There were people committed to justice. The work was not finished. It would never be truly finished. But progress had been made. Real, meaningful, lasting progress. And that progress started with one woman who refused to accept injustice. One woman who had the courage to speak up. One woman who turned a moment of discrimination into a movement for change. As Amara walked into her house, she smiled. She had not asked to be a symbol of change. She had not wanted to be in the spotlight. She had simply wanted to drive home from a meeting in peace. But sometimes life gives you a different path. And if you have the courage to walk that path, you might just change the world.